All right, and welcome to the daily space weather, folks. Looking at the sun in 171 angstroms, we see a little bit of activity rising there. No sunspots, 10.7 centimeter radial flux, back up to 69. Not a completely inactive sun. We are in geomagnetic unrest conditions, that is, at a KP of 4. Let's look at the GOES X-ray imager. And there you can see some bright regions setting in the southwest, as well as a little bit of rising regions there in the east and in the north there, the northeast. Right up here underneath my pointer. Let's look at 304 angstroms. Looking at about 7 hours of the activity of your local yellow dwarf. Check out the filaments in the northwest. Let's look at more data. Again, 10.7 centimeter radial flux back up to 69. So right near that 70 line, which we've drawn in here in orange. Here's a view from Stereo A's coronagraph. No Earth-facing coronal mass ejections this time. Looks like instead a weak coronal hole stream in the process of hitting right now. Before we move on to more stuff, let's talk about Patreon. That's this channel's main source of funding. If you want to fund the channel, please do so via Patreon. You will see updates first, sometimes hours, sometimes days before everybody else, depending on the nature of the updates. So check that out, patreon.com/smAsho, as YouTube pays us precisely nothing. Goose egg for these videos. We also do have a PayPal. And another way to support the channel is via the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign, specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers. Links below the video in the description. There's still a whole plant CBD suspension and hemp seed oil sale going on, as well as a lot of other products out there to be able to be purchased. So if you're in the market for CBDs, check out Hemp Lucid's Spaced Out campaign. Now, yesterday we talked about David Dubine's book, as we've been doing all throughout September. It's Disaster Preparedness Month. Yesterday we talked about focusing on your personal cash flow. Today let's talk about reducing debts. Now, that's another way to help to hedge against things like inflation and so on, depending on your situation. So, hey, reduce your debts, especially high-interest debts like credit cards. And focus instead on, perhaps at this time of inflation, it might be a good idea to just buy assets, especially if you're aware of the coming food shortages and increases in prices. So not only inflation is affecting this, also food prices, actual prices, are going to be increasing for the next year. Be prepared, not scared. Let's talk about the real-time solar wind as we go back to the data. We just saw a recent uptick here in the solar wind speed and density at the same time. It went all the way up to, a little over 10 there, I'm not sure. 10 protons per cubic centimeter, 15.04 protons per cubic centimeter there was the high. We're now off that, back down to 5.97. Solar wind speed, small uptick there also. In the past few hours, up to 455 kilometers per second. There's the ACE data, looking pretty corroborative. Again, KP index is a 4. A sudden uptick there. And let's go on to the geospace magnetosphere movies. First, we'll look at the density. Here we go. There's 4 hours of data of that. And we do expect to see a small density spike at the end. You should see the white. There's the compression of the white areas. Keep in mind, white areas are the low density on this model. Here's the pressure. And again, this is the University of Michigan Geospace model. And if you want to read about the space modeling framework, just click the links in the description below the video. We link to this page, Geospace Magnetosphere Movies. Just scroll down to the bottom, click Details, and you can read all about the space weather modeling framework. There we see some compression events happening. I know there's one right here. See that compression event as the Van Allen belts get charged up and compressed. And let's move on and look at the geospace ground magnetic perturbations. That moment of compression was around 7:30 UT, and we should see that reflected here across the globe as current passed through the planet at that moment, folks. Believe it or not. That refreshed on us. We're going to let that play through 4 hours as we archive the data so you don't have to. And there's that little current event there as the South Pole creeps into the Atlantic Ocean, and we have two North Poles, one over northern Canada and one over Siberia. Here's the ionosphere movie, looking at 6 hours here. And we see a bit of a charge up again, just like yesterday, up to 12 megahertz, shown in pink on the sun-facing side. Let's look at the latest image. And the latest image is looking pretty normal. A little on the charge side, on the nighttime side. Nothing too special there. Here we see some oddities in the X-ray flux here over the past few hours. Something to keep an eye on throughout the day. And when I say ion, the pun is intentional. Here's the electron flux. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a dip in this, depending on what that solar wind does. Again, it looks like a diffuse coronal hole wind stream. Relativistic electrons are getting into a more moderate, modest range here. Charging hazards are pretty minimal, mainly over the Caribbean, South Atlantic, and South Pacific. Here's the locations of stuff, items in the solar system. And there's where things will be in 1 week as we approach another new moon. Where were you at Harvest Moon? Were you harvesting? Check out the O's magnetometer. See some pretty sawtooth spikes in that as a bunch of protons hit the magnetosphere. Again, coronal hole wind stream. It's got all the signatures. Here's the Gong 2 data. We still see some activity here rising. It looks like it's going to be south of the equator based on what these fields are doing. Not a lot else to say except there is still a tug of war going on here right in front of stereo B right now as the solar fields try to decide which field is dominant. Here's where stuff is above my head. Check out in-the-sky.org, create your own sky map. You can even animate it. Look how awesome that is. If you're interested in when Deneb will set, well, for me, it's going to set at about 8 a.m. Earthquake rundown. Over the past 24 hours, we see about 22 hours ago, 23 hours ago, 21 hours ago. Yeah, more like 21 hours ago. We see a 4.9 at Tonga. That one at nearly 100 kilometers depth. Here's a Mexican quake, a 4.8. Here's a 4.7 at New Caledonia, 4.5 at South Sandwich Islands. That's way down south, near Antarctica, relatively speaking. Whoopsies. Come on, USGS. We know you can do it. You're funded by taxpayer dollars. You've got to be the picture of efficiency. Here's a 4.6 at Japan. Here's a 4.0 at Chile. Here's a 4.5 off in the very outskirts of the Aleutian chain there. 4.5. A bunch of volcanic islands out there, as we know. 4.5 at China. 4.5 near Kamchatka. Looks like the northeastern portion of the island there. Peninsula, rather. 4.4 at the Philippines. That one is at extreme depth. Heads up Philippines for a larger quake at the surface. That one's at 584 kilometers. Perhaps the deepest one I've seen there ever. Also, we see a 5.2 at Japan, a 4.7 at Indonesia. Near Banda Aceh, the site of a horrific tsunami many years ago. 4.6 at Peru. That one's also at depth. Heads up Western South America for a larger quake. And lastly, a very deep quake at Fiji. 4.6 magnitude, 540 kilometers depth. Check out the lava dome at Shivaluch. That looks amazing. just a few days ago on September 12th. Quite an interesting formation going on there. Tell your friends, tell your foes. Let's run down the earthquakes for the 16th. Today, Monday, September 16th. Volcano list includes Shivaluch exploding once again, producing a 13,000-foot ash plume. Mount Abiko, 12,000-foot ash plume there. Mount Aso, 6,000-foot ash plume there. Sakurajima exploding, continuously observed. 13,000-foot ash plume. Mount Dakono exploding, 6,000-foot plume there. Revenador, mild explosive activity and sporadic emissions of volcanic ash. And Sabancaya, while emitting sporadic puff emissions, it's not recommended that you try to do a back handspring over Sabancaya. This gymnastics section brought to you by the smAsho Mash channel at massive personal expense. Here's the Western jet streams, courtesy nullschool.net. We're going to let that play for 1 minute as you see the meridional flow all over the place. We've got some jets here in the south, off the west coast of South America, going the exact opposite direction, nearly due west. As regular viewers are aware, the jet stream normally flows to the east. Here's the eastern world. Speaking of the east, we are starting to see some convection in the upper level high pressure winds in the northern hemisphere, as well as a changeover to the spring style rotations there in the southern hemisphere. We won't get into it. We'll just keep moving on as there's more stuff to cover. And we're only producing one video today, folks. Check out lightningmaps.org the next time you hear lightning above your head. Look at that. A lone bolt just came in right there. South of, near the Maldives, a lone bolt. Was it a mega bolt? Please leave a comment if you were on a boat with hunks such as Marky Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney at the time. Lots of lightning off the coast of the U.S. right now. Here's the pressure maps, courtesy windy.com. We'll let that play through 24 hours. So you see where pressure systems are in one day. Let me move this over a little bit so we can see the whole U.S. It looks like that tropical system there. I don't know if that's a hurricane or not. I'll let other channels cover it. Off the coast of Florida, Georgia. Looks like it's staying out to sea, and for that, we thank you. Here's the U.S. Doppler radar, courtesy AccuWeather.com. And that was a highly unwelcome advertisement brought to you by Delta Airlines. Anyway, here's the AccuWeather Doppler. And I don't know what's going on with it. It looks okay. I saw missing data earlier. We'll just call it a day. And here's the water vapor map. Kind of. Does it look a little jacked up to you? I don't know what's going on with it. It looks like we have complete data this time, at least. I'm not going to try to mess with the coloring. The NASA GOES interactive weather satellites are completely non-functional here for about 3 days. If you check out the NASA GOES interactive weather satellites, all you're going to see is data from September 13th. It's pretty odd. Maybe there's some kind of manual requirement to put in dates, but at least there's the water vapor map over the U.S. We've graduated to that is a sinkhole. It's sinkhole versus censored, folks. Censored versus sinkhole, otherwise known as a donkey and a hole in the ground. Please understand the distinction between the two. Speaking of distinctions, let's talk about the differences between Shia and Sunni Muslims. Now, this is a huge issue that people don't seem to understand. There are two sects, two major sects of Islam, Sunni and Shia. These two sects are based on the inheritance of Muhammad's throne, his religious throne. When he died, one sect said, the Shia said, Muhammad's Islamic throne should be inherited by his cousin or nephew or something like that. The other side said that his chief cleric should inherit the throne, and that is what all the fighting is about. If you weren't aware, please read the article. Now, my best friend is half Syrian, and his father moved here in the 70s, probably because he saw the writing on the wall and decided to get the hell out of there before stuff like the most recent stuff happened. But anyway, I may have a little bit more insight into Islam and the Middle East and to geopolitical relations than your average YouTuber, as I've been exposed to Islam since I was about 7 years old. So anyway, that's the main source of the battles. Let me just give you another breakdown here real quick. If you're wondering who lives where, again, read the article. Sunni Muslims make up about 85% of all Muslims over the world. Major countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Yemen, Pakistan, Indonesia, Turkey, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia are primarily Sunni. Large Shiite populations live in places like Iran and Iraq, Yemen, Bahrain, Syria, and Lebanon. Let's move on to more stuff now. Eric Margolis, we've linked this article also in the description. Eric Margolis believes that the September 11th attacks were financed by private citizens in Saudi Arabia and organized from countries such as Germany, Saudi Arabia, and possibly Spain. All the hijackers came from states nominally allied to the U.S. or its protectorates. Think about that. And don't try to repeal the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. That's not going to work. But read the article. It's pretty interesting. It may give you insight that you were not aware of. Were you aware that Google pays us nothing to make these videos and demonetizes our videos and messes with the programming every day to prevent us from, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's algorithms or if it's people manually reviewing our stuff, but Google is not a verb. Google is a scam. Let's talk about crypto. Let's see where Bitcoin's been in the past year. Courtesy cnbc.com/markets. And there's the 1-year Bitcoin chart. And once again, like it was down here, it's not looking good again. This is zeroing in on probably lower volume. Please leave a comment your thoughts on crypto. Let's also look at the Coinbase quote for Ethereum. Full disclosure, I only own Ethereum, and it's a small proof of concept amount, not a real investment. There's the Ethereum chart, and I've been saying this looks better than Bitcoin the whole time, and it still looks better than Bitcoin. Now let's look at precious metals. As you're probably aware, gold has recently reached, I believe it's a 7-year high. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, there's the gold chart, and very close to its high levels. Let's look at silver. And there's the 1-year chart of silver. We see also a multi-year high was just achieved there. Although keep in mind the all-time high of silver is more like $50. Please leave a comment if you remember back here in November when we were telling our viewers to buy silver at $14 per ounce. This investment advice is for novelty purposes only, so don't try to sue us. You'll fail. We have seen a recent spike in crude oil here due to attacks on Saudi production. We won't go in any more in depth into that other than to say that that's the alleged cause of the oil spike. Keep in mind, the United States has upended all of these other countries as the largest exporter of oil on Earth. And here's a chart of the S&P. We see it's at incredibly high levels. Again, that's a 1-year chart. And that is a reference for all of our viewers who own U.S. equities. Anyway, here's the article from CNBC about attacks on Saudi oil supply effectively wiping out the world's spare capacity. Again, keep in mind, the U.S. is now the largest exporter of oil in the world. So this is going to impact the U.S. less than other countries, although world oil markets will be impacted. Are you on social media? Are you shadow banned? Do you watch our videos? Does your channel go black just because you watched one of our videos? Who knows? Check out minds.com, the open source social media that loves our thumbnails making fun of Google. And, well, there's nothing fun about Google, but we're making fun of it anyway. And we've just recently gone over 500,000 views since yesterday. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to our new subscribers, minds.com/smAsho, the open source social media that will not censor you. It will not shadow ban you. It will not deplatform you. It will not deperson you. It'll just give you all of your views and not try to screw you over because it does not agree with you politically. Although it might agree with you politically. If you enjoy the content on YouTube, please press like, subscribe, and notify. And by the way, we'll be watching this premiere with all of our viewers. We watch it live. We just don't shoot it live at this point. Although we're going to start soon, so stay tuned for that. And please become our next patron, as this channel is supported by Patreon and not by YouTube. This YouTube channel is monetized for Google, not for us. As again, they pay us precisely zilch. $0 makes 0 cents. Let's talk about a nonsense article on nonsensealert.com. Nonsensealert.com. CO2 makes up just 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere, and here's why its impact is so massive. And I'll just summarize. The reason that its impact is so massive is because propaganda and nonsense like this article don't understand atmospheric physics. The people writing the articles are either lying or they don't understand atmospheric physics. Let's show you another article. Why water vapor matters. And we'll leave links to both of these. Well, here's why water vapor matters, folks. It's because water vapor, not carbon dioxide, is the Earth's most critical greenhouse gas. Besides the sun, water vapor ranks as the second source of Earth's warmth, accounting for about 60% of the warming effect. Water vapor captures and holds warmth from the ground and carries that into the atmosphere. Please let that sink in, and if you need to share with your friends, there is a link to that article in the description below the video. It's about that time to run for our lives away from this computer. But first, we're going to look at the 94 angstrom view, and we see a large coronal hole rising there in the east. Very heavily defined, so expect a magnetic connection for that soon. The earthquake drought continues. If you live in an earthquake-prone zone, please have a plan. North Pole coronal hole is looking bigger than it did just a couple of days ago. Could that be a decreasing in the solar polar north field? Who knows? We'll be making another video about it soon. Let's take a look at that North Pole in close-up before we exit stage east. There's that rising coronal hole just south of the equator, just south of an active region. And there's the South Pole coronal hole, not looking nearly as gigantic as the north. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. We are out of here. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins. That didn't work.